In the silent darkness of space, where only broken satellites and drifting wrecks remained, a man named Ethan Cole searched for forgotten metal. He was a scavenger, a space scrapper who lived from one lucky find to the next. Every day he floated among the stars, chasing the dream of one big discovery that could finally buy him peace. But tonight felt different. The stars were too quiet, the sensors too still. Ethan's old radar beeped once, faint and strange. He looked at the signal, an object large and metallic, not marked by any known ship registry. Probably just another hunk of junk, he muttered. Yet something in his gut told him otherwise. He adjusted his ship's course, guiding it toward the unknown reading. As he got closer, the object came into view, a massive derelict ship, half buried in drifting asteroids. It was old, older than any human design he had ever seen, with symbols carved across its hull that glowed faintly blue. The nameplate was unreadable, covered in alien frost. Ethan stared at it through the viewport, whispering to himself, "Now what in the stars are you?" He scanned the wreck again. No life signs, no power, only silence. The kind of silence that makes your heart beat louder just to fill the void. People said the outer zones were haunted, full of ships lost in wars between humans and ancient empires. Ethan never believed in ghosts, but he believed in opportunity. And this wreck looked like opportunity wrapped in mystery. He suited up, grabbed his plasma torch, and connected his ship's docking arm. Metal groaned as he entered through a cracked airlock. Inside, the air was frozen thin and smelled of old dust and machine oil. His flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing long hallways with strange markings. He recorded everything, every door, every corridor, hoping this salvage could make him rich. But as he reached the central chamber, something stopped him cold. There, in the middle of the ship, stood 8 glass pods arranged in a perfect circle, each one filled with mist, tubes, and a faint blue glow. He stepped closer, brushing frost from one of the pods. Inside was a woman, or something that looked almost like one. Her skin shimmered faintly, her hair floated like silver threads, and her face was calm, almost peaceful. Ethan blinked, his heart pounding. "What in the universe?" he whispered. He checked his scanner. No heartbeat, no readings, yet the pod was powered. How could it have power when the ship was dead? He followed the cables leading from the pods, tracing them to a small energy core still pulsing weakly. As he examined the panel, his glove brushed a strange button marked with alien script. The lights flickered once, then the entire room hummed with life. Warning symbols flashed across the walls and the pods began to glow brighter. Ethan stepped back, panic rising in his chest. One by one, the pods released steam like the ship was exhaling after centuries. The hum grew louder, the blue lights turning to deep violet. The glass of the nearest pod cracked, a sharp hiss echoing through the chamber. Then he saw it. The woman inside opened her eyes. They were bright, silver, and alive. Ethan stumbled backward, his breath catching in his throat. The woman blinked once, staring directly at him, and whispered something in a voice like wind and music. He couldn't understand the words, but they chilled him to the core. Outside the ship, his radar picked up sudden movement. The wreck wasn't drifting anymore. It was turning, adjusting its position like something ancient had awakened. Ethan didn't know whether to run or stay. His instincts screamed danger, but his curiosity held him still. Then he saw the message appear on the wall. Glowing in alien script, he aimed his scanner. Translating the symbols slowly, the message read, "Do not wake them. They will remember." Ethan's blood ran cold, his mind spinning with fear and fascination. He turned to leave, but the woman inside the pod pressed her hand against the glass. The frost melted under her touch and her lips formed one clear word: "Awakener." The ship trembled again, lights flickering across every corridor. Ethan realized too late that this wasn't a wreck at all. It was a sleeping vessel, and he had just broken its dream. In that dark silence between heartbeats, Ethan understood one terrifying truth. He hadn't found junk. He had found something waiting. The ship shook like something alive was breathing again. Metal screamed in the distance and ancient engines coughed after centuries of sleep. Ethan Cole held onto a railing, eyes wide as the lights flickered to life around him. He felt the air warming, the frost melting off the glass pods. Steam filled the room like a ghostly fog. Curling around his feet, each pod glowed brighter, veins of blue light running across the floor and walls. He heard a low humming, like voices whispering through the ship's bones. The woman in the first pod opened her eyes completely, her pupils glowing silver like twin stars. Ethan stepped back, his pulse racing. "Hey, stay calm. I didn't mean to," he stammered, his voice echoing through the chamber. The woman pressed her hand to the glass, and suddenly the pod opened with a soft hiss. Cold mist poured out, and she slowly stepped forward, bare feet touching the metal floor. Her movements were graceful but uncertain, as if she was remembering how to move. Her skin shimmered with faint golden patterns that pulsed with every heartbeat. She looked at Ethan, tilting her head, and said something in a language that sounded like a melody. Ethan raised his hand slowly. "I can't understand you," he said, "but I mean no harm." Then, the other pods began to open one after another. 7 more figures stepped out, each different. One with blue markings on her arms, one with glowing eyes of green, another with hair like strands of crystal. They looked at each other in confusion, whispering in that same alien tongue. The ship seemed to react to their voices. Lights pulsing in rhythm with their words, Ethan activated his translator. Though it struggled to catch their speech, one name appeared clearly through the static. Lyra. She was the first woman, the one who had awakened first. She pointed at him, eyes narrowing with curiosity. "Human," she said softly, her voice now shaped in broken English. Ethan blinked in shock. You know my language?" Lyra frowned, her voice distant like she was remembering something. "Long ago. We knew many things." Behind her, one of the others hissed something harsh in their tongue, glaring at Ethan like he was poison. Lyra silenced her with a gesture, then looked back at him. "You are the awakener," she said. Ethan had no idea what that meant. "I'm just a scavenger," he replied. "I found your ship by accident." Lyra shook her head. "Nothing happens by accident," she said, and her silver eyes glowed again. A deep vibration ran through the floor. The ship was moving. Ethan turned toward his wrist console, panic rising. His ship, the Nomad, was still docked outside, but it was being pulled along as the alien vessel reactivated. Engines that hadn't burned in 1,000 years roared back to life. The view through the window showed stars shifting. The ship was aligning itself toward an unknown destination. Ethan tried to reach his ship controls, but the signal was jammed. He turned to Lyra. "Stop this thing. It's not safe." But Lyra looked confused, as if the ship wasn't obeying her either. "The core has chosen," she whispered. "It recognizes you." "Recognizes me? I've never seen anything like this before," Ethan said, voice shaking. Lyra approached him, her eyes scanning his face, his hands, the light of his scanner. She placed her palm over his chest, and for a moment, Ethan saw a flash, a memory not his own, a planet burning, towers collapsing, and 8 figures standing in fire and light. A voice echoed through his mind. "We will return when the human awakener arrives," Ethan gasped, stumbling backward, breaking the connection. "What was that? What did you show me?" Lyra looked at him with sorrow in her eyes. "What you have awakened was not meant to wake," she said. "Our time ended with betrayal. Our sleep was meant to protect the stars from us." Before Ethan could respond, alarms blared across the ship. A hologram appeared in the air, an ancient warning message replaying itself. "Containment breach. Pod 09 missing." Ethan's stomach twisted. There were only 8 pods in the chamber. "Wait, Pod 9? There's another?" he whispered. Lyra's expression darkened. "The 9th was exiled," she said quietly. "She was not one of us anymore," the other 7 aliens whispered fearfully, their glowing markings dimming. Ethan looked around, realizing the ship wasn't just old. It was a prison. The pods weren't made for sleep. They were made for containment. The walls pulsed again, and screens lit up with strange code. Ethan's translator struggled but caught fragments. 9th signal detected. Tracking. Inbound. A deep sound echoed from outside the hull like something massive was approaching. Lyra's eyes went wide. "She found us," she whispered. Ethan turned toward the viewport and saw a shadow in the distance. A smaller ship moving toward them fast. "She?" Ethan asked, his voice shaking. Lyra nodded slowly. "The one who remembers everything, the one who never forgave." The other 7 began to chant softly, their voices low and ancient. The ship's power grew stronger, light wrapping around the chamber like a shield. Ethan looked at Lyra, fear rising inside him. "What happens now?" Lyra looked out at the stars, her voice barely a whisper. "Now, Awakener. You will see why we were buried in the dark. Outside, the shadow ship locked onto them, engines flaring. And in the silence of the void, Ethan understood. This was not a rescue, this was a reckoning. The alien ship drifted through the stars once more, its engines glowing like the heart of a sleeping beast. Ethan Cole stood in the control room, surrounded by screens filled with strange symbols. He had seen things no human had ever witnessed. 8 alien women from a forgotten age now awake and alive. But what scared him most was not what they said, it was what they refused to say. Lyra, the leader, stood near the main console, her silver eyes watching endless data scroll by. The others moved silently through the corridors, whispering in their language, touching walls like they remembered something painful. Ethan had tried to ask questions. What were they? Why were they sleeping? Who built this ship? But all he got were half-truths and glances filled with sadness. He felt like a guest on a ship that didn't want him, and yet somehow needed him. The hum of the engines deepened as the ship entered a new sector. Ethan looked at the star map and froze. They were heading toward the Vera ruins, a forbidden zone, marked by every galactic authority as unstable and deadly. Lyra, he said carefully, you're taking us into a restricted field. No ship survives that area. Lyra didn't answer right away, her voice soft when she finally spoke. That is where it all began, Ethan frowned. Where what began? Lyra turned toward him, her expression unreadable. The fall of the Ilari Empire, she said. The name echoed through the ship like thunder. Ethan had heard of them. The Ilari were myths, an ancient alien race said to be wiped out long before humans took to the stars. Scholars said they were gods of science, masters of bioengineering, creators of living ships and living weapons, but they vanished, leaving only ruins and silence behind. Ethan studied the glowing faces around him, the marks on their skin, the way their eyes shimmered with strange light. Wait, he whispered, you're Ilari, aren't you? Lyra nodded slowly. We were once, she said, before the great betrayal. Ethan's heart raced. Betrayal by who? Lyra's voice grew cold. By humans. The words hit him like a meteor. That's not possible, Ethan said quickly. Humans didn't even exist back then. Lyra looked at him sadly. Your kind was younger, yes, but your ancestors reached for the stars far earlier than your history remembers. Ethan stared. Speechless, Lyra continued, her voice calm but filled with pain. They came seeking knowledge, peace, and power. We welcomed them, we shared our science. We taught them to shape life and light. But greed grows fast in small hearts, she said. They wanted control, then they wanted to use us as tools. Ethan's chest tightened. That can't be true. Lyra smiled faintly, not in anger but in pity. Your people erased the truth, Ethan wanted to argue. But the ship's systems interrupted. A hologram flickered to life in the air. It was an image of cities made of crystal, towers reaching above clouds, beings of light walking among stars, then fire. Explosions tearing through worlds, screams echoing in unknown languages, and then silence. Ethan stepped back, watching the destruction unfold like a forgotten nightmare. Lyra touched the projection, her hand trembling. This was our home, Elara Prime, she whispered. Ethan watched as ships like living beasts fell from the skies, and strange energy waves devoured oceans. We tried to end the war, Lyra said. So we built this vessel, the sanctuary, to preserve what remained. Ethan looked at her in disbelief. You mean, this ship? Lyra nodded. Yes, it was meant to sleep forever, to keep our memories safe. But someone changed the code, she added softly. Someone left a signal for you. Ethan's mind spun. Me? That doesn't make any sense, Lyra turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly. You carry something, she said. Something ancient in your blood. Before he could respond, the ship shuddered violently, alarms flashing red. The others ran into the chamber. Speaking rapidly in Ilari tongue on the main screen, a shape appeared, a smaller craft approaching fast. It's her, Lyra whispered. The 9th. Ethan stared at the monitor. The shadowy ship was sleek and dark, its hull marked with red glowing symbols. A transmission flickered in. A face appeared, half-shadowed, eyes burning with fury. Lyra, the voice said. You should have stayed dead. Lyra's jaw tightened. Vera, she said, her tone full of sorrow. Ethan watched frozen as the 2 alien women spoke in their ancient language. The screens filled with strange code. The translation system struggled, but one phrase came through clearly. He has the key. Ethan looked from one to the other, confused. What key? What are you talking about? Lyra didn't answer, but the others looked at him in fear. The ship vibrated again as energy beams struck the hull. Vera's ship was attacking. Shields are holding, one of the aliens said. Her voice calm but shaking slightly. Ethan rushed to the console. Trying to help. Can't we outrun her? Lyra shook her head. She knows every command we do. The lights flickered, and the holograms around them glitched. Ethan saw flashes and memories not his own. A man standing beside Lyra. A human scientist with kind eyes holding her hand. Then, the same man giving an order to destroy the Alari city. Ethan gasped, clutching his head. What was that? Lyra looked at him in shock. You saw it? She asked. Ethan nodded weakly. It was him, a human part of your past. Lyra's face grew pale. Then it's true. His blood runs in you. Before Ethan could understand, a blast rocked the ship. Vera's voice echoed through the speakers. You cannot hide him. Lyra, the cycle will end where it began. The ship's shields began to fail, sparks raining from the ceiling. Lyra turned to Ethan, her voice urgent. You must go to the core. It will show you the truth. Ethan hesitated. What truth? Lyra's eyes were fierce now. The truth of what you are. The ship groaned again as another hit struck. Ethan ran toward the corridor, heart pounding, the air alive with blue light and fire. Behind him, Lyra shouted something in Alari, and the other 7 formed a circle, their hands glowing bright. Energy filled the hall, like ancient power waking once more. Ethan looked back one last time. The faces of the Alari were calm yet determined, and he realized this wasn't a war between humans and aliens anymore. It was a battle between memory and truth outside. Vera's ship circled like a predator ready to strike. And deep within the sanctuary's core, something old began to stir. A voice that hadn't spoken in thousands of years whispered through the halls. The Awakener has come. The cycle will begin anew. The corridors of the ship burned with flickering blue light. Ethan ran through the smoke, his breath loud inside his helmet. Every corner pulsed with strange energy, and the floor trembled under his boots behind him. The echoes of the alien voices grew fainter as the battle raged. He followed the glowing lines on the wall that led toward the core chamber. Lyra's last words repeated in his mind. The core will show you the truth. He didn't know what truth she meant, only that Vera, the rogue queen, wanted him dead before he found it. The air felt heavier with every step, like he was walking deeper into the heartbeat of a god. When he reached the chamber door, it opened slowly with a deep metallic sigh. Inside was a sphere of light suspended above a pool of liquid metal. Strange holograms floated around it, images of stars, planets, and human DNA intertwined with alien symbols. Ethan stared in awe. This is impossible, he whispered. The core reacted to his voice, sending a ripple of light across the room. The holograms shifted, forming the shape of a human man, the same face he had seen in his visions. The man spoke, his voice calm but filled with sadness. If you are hearing this, it means the sanctuary has awoken. Ethan froze. Unable to breathe, the man continued. My name is Dr. Elias Cole. Ethan's heart stopped for a second. Cole? He whispered. That's my name. The hologram nodded as if it could hear his thoughts. I was part of the human science team that created the hybrid experiment, the Alari Queens. We wanted to unite 2 species, to stop endless wars, but when power entered the equation, humanity betrayed its promise. Ethan's eyes widened. The image of burning cities and falling ships flashed again. He could almost smell the smoke, feel the fire. The man's voice grew softer. Lyra was our greatest success, a mind born of peace, but others saw her as a weapon. When the betrayal began, I hid her and the others aboard this vessel, sealing them in stasis to protect them. His tone darkened. But Vera, she saw only vengeance. Ethan's legs weakened, the truth sinking like a stone in his chest. Lyra wasn't a monster, she was a victim, and his ancestor had helped create her. The hologram flickered again, showing coordinates and an encrypted message. Ethan, the voice said, you were meant to finish what I started, not to repeat my sins. The image dissolved into dust and light, leaving Ethan alone with the humming core. He stood there for a long moment, numb, when he turned to leave. Something on the floor caught his eye, a broken data pad covered in soot and scratches. He picked it up, wiping off the dust. Its screen flickered weakly, displaying a single message in alien script. Ethan activated the translator, watching the words form in human letters. The eighth must never wake, she remembers the truth. He frowned. The eighth? He muttered, but all 8 are awake already. Then he paused. Something felt wrong. There were 9 pods originally, not 8. A cold shiver ran down his spine. Maybe one of the pods had been hidden, or maybe someone had tampered with the records. He hurried back toward the main deck, the data pad still in his hand. As he approached, the hallway lights dimmed and the air felt heavier again. A whisper floated through the ship's speakers, faint but clear. Awakener. Ethan stopped, turning slowly. Who's there? The whisper came again, now sharper. You opened what should have stayed buried. The temperature dropped. Frost forming along the walls as if the ship itself was afraid. And then he saw her, standing at the end of the corridor. Shrouded in mist, she looked like Lyra, but her eyes were a deep crimson instead of silver. Her expression was calm, yet filled with something cold and endless. Ethan stepped back, his heart hammering. You're the 9th, he whispered. She tilted her head, smiling faintly. Names fade, Awakener. But memories don't. He wanted to run, but his body refused to move. She walked closer, her footsteps echoing like thunder in a tomb. When they betrayed us, she said softly, they erased our history, our pain, our existence. But I remember everything, the wars, the lies. The human who created us. She stopped inches away from him, her breath cold against his skin. Elias Cole, your blood. Ethan's throat tightened. You knew him, he said quietly. The 9th nodded. He was the key and the curse, she said, and now you carry his echo. Her tone changed suddenly, her voice sharp as glass. Lyra will never tell you the full truth. She believes in peace, but peace built on lies is still war. Before Ethan could answer, the ship shook violently. Lyra's voice shouted through the intercom. Ethan, get away from her. The 9th turned toward the ceiling, eyes glowing red. Too late, sister, she whispered. Energy crackled between her hands, lightning dancing across the walls. Ethan ducked as a blast of energy tore through the corridor. Alarms screamed, lights shattered, and flames burst from the walls. He crawled through the smoke. Clutching the datapad to his chest, Lyra and the others appeared from the far end, their skin glowing with battle marks of light. The 2 sisters faced each other, one of light, one of shadow. Their voices echoed like ancient thunder. Speaking in the language of the Aelari, Ethan's translator struggled, but he caught fragments: truth, blood, betrayal, cycle. Then, the ship's systems went wild, lights flashing red as both their powers clashed. Ethan tried to move closer, but the force pushed him back. He shouted over the chaos, "Stop this! You're destroying everything." Lyra looked at him, tears in her eyes. You don't understand, Ethan. She remembers the wrong version of the truth. The 9th screamed, There is no wrong version, only what was stolen. The explosion that followed was silent, a burst of white energy that knocked Ethan unconscious. When he opened his eyes, everything was quiet again. The ship drifted through space, its lights dim and flickering. Lyra stood beside him, her expression heavy with sadness. She's gone, Lyra said softly. But not for long. Ethan sat up slowly, feeling the ache in his chest. What did she mean about the truth? Lyra didn't answer right away. She looked out into the stars instead. Her voice broke the silence. Because, Ethan, she was right about one thing. What destroyed our world wasn't war or greed. It was love, she whispered. Her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark, Ethan stared at her confused. Love? Lyra nodded slowly. Your ancestor didn't betray us for power. He did it for someone he couldn't save. And before Ethan could ask more, the ship's radar beeped, another signal approaching fast. Lyra turned toward him, her voice steady but full of fear. She's coming back, she said, and this time, she won't be alone. The stars outside the ship burned faintly. Distant and cold, the once silent vessel, the sanctuary, drifted between the glowing clouds of a nebula, its hull scorched and trembling from the last battle. Ethan Cole stood in the control room staring at the blinking radar. Another signal was approaching, fast and deliberate. Lyra stood beside him, her silver eyes watching the monitors. Her face calm but unreadable. She's coming, Lyra said quietly. Ethan's voice was low. The 9th? Lyra nodded. Vera does not give up, she said. Not when she believes she's right. Ethan clenched his fists. You said she remembers the wrong truth. What does that even mean? Lyra didn't answer right away. She turned to face the star map, her expression thoughtful and heavy. She remembers what the humans did, she said finally. But she doesn't understand why. Ethan frowned. You mean my ancestor, Elias Cole? Lyra nodded slowly. He was the last human we trusted. Ethan felt a cold chill in his stomach. And he betrayed you. Lyra's voice softened. He betrayed himself, she said. And he broke the universe trying to fix it. Before Ethan could ask what she meant, the ship shuddered violently. The alarm screamed again, and bright flashes of energy appeared across the hull. Vera's ship had arrived, a black vessel shaped like a blade. Cutting through the stars, her voice echoed through the comms. Sharp and cruel, Lyra, give him to me, or I will tear your sanctuary apart. Lyra looked at Ethan. She wants you. Ethan's heart raced. Why me? I'm just a scavenger. Lyra shook her head. Not anymore, she said softly. You carry the code, the genetic key that can unlock the Aolari core. Ethan stepped back, his mind spinning. The core. What does it do? Lyra looked away. It can create life, she said, or erase it. The ship trembled again as another blast hit. Ethan gripped the railing, shouting, Then let's run! Lyra smiled faintly. You don't outrun vengeance, she said. You face it. Her words carried a sadness that made Ethan's chest tighten. The other Aolari queens entered the chamber, glowing, powerful, their bodies surrounded by soft blue energy. They spoke in their ancient tongue, forming a circle around the console. Ethan didn't understand their words, but he could feel their fear and their resolve. Lyra turned to him. We will protect you, she said, because if she gets you, she will use your blood to awaken the army. Ethan blinked. Army? Lyra nodded. The Aolari fleet, thousands of ships sleeping across the stars. He felt his knees weaken. You're saying this isn't just about revenge? Lyra's voice darkened. No, it's about extinction. Outside, the void lit up with bursts of plasma fire. Vera's ship launched drones, black metallic swarms that sliced through space like knives. Each drone latched onto the sanctuary, drilling through armor and releasing streams of acid. Ethan grabbed a plasma rifle from the wall, his voice steady. Tell me where to aim. Lyra blinked in surprise. You would fight for us? Ethan met her gaze. You're not the monsters here, he said. And I'm not letting history repeat itself. She smiled for the first time, small, sad but real. Then fight beside us, human, she said, and let the stars bear witness. They moved through the corridors, blue light flashing as the ship groaned around them. Ethan fired at the invading drones, his shots cutting through the smoke. The Aolari fought beside him, their hands glowing with pure energy, each movement graceful and deadly. One of them, Nira, took a hit to the chest, falling in silence, her light fading slowly. Ethan knelt beside her, whispering, Stay with us, but she smiled weakly, her voice faint. Do not fear the end, Awakener. We were never meant to live forever. Rage burned in Ethan's veins. He charged forward, blasting another wave of drones into pieces as he fought. Memories not his own flashed before his eyes. Battles, laboratories, and the face of his ancestor. Elias arguing with Lyra long ago. He saw humans turning on the Aolari, soldiers burning their cities, and he saw Elias crying, refusing an order from his commanders, choosing instead to hide Lyra's essence in the sanctuary. The connection broke suddenly. Leaving Ethan gasping, Lyra appeared beside him. You saw it, didn't you? He nodded weakly. He didn't betray you. He tried to save you. Lyra's eyes shimmered. That is why she hates him, she said softly. Because he loved me more than his own kind. The words hit Ethan like a meteor. Loved you? He repeated. Lyra nodded slowly. It was love that doomed us all. She looked away, her voice breaking. When he sealed us, he promised to return. But humans destroyed him before he could. Before Ethan could speak, the ship's main door exploded inward. Vera stepped through the smoke, her eyes burning red. Her armor cracked, but her presence terrifying. Still protecting the traitor's bloodline? She hissed. Lyra stepped in front of Ethan, her silver aura shining bright. He is not him. Vera. He carries only his spirit, not his sins. Vera raised her hand, energy swirling around her fingers. Then he dies as his echo, Ethan shouted. Stop! You want truth? Then listen. Your world was destroyed because humans feared what they didn't understand. But my ancestor tried to save you, he continued. He saved Lyra. He saved all of you. Vera's expression faltered for a moment, her eyes flickering between anger and doubt. Lyra took a step forward, her voice soft. We were never meant to rule, sister, only to remember. For a brief second, the air fell silent. Then Vera screamed, her voice breaking the calm. Lies! She unleashed a blast of energy toward Ethan. Lyra moved faster than light, throwing herself in front of him. The impact threw them both across the room, the ship shaking under the force. When Ethan opened his eyes, Lyra was on the floor, her body flickering like a dying star. He crawled to her side, his heart pounding. Stay with me. Please, Lyra smiled weakly. Don't let her win, she whispered. Her hand touched his chest, light flowing into him like fire and starlight. Then with one last breath, she closed her eyes, her glow fading. Vera stood over them, her red aura blazing. Now the last light of peace dies, she said coldly. Ethan stood slowly, tears mixing with sweat and blood. His voice was low but steady. You're wrong, he said. She's not gone. She's part of me now. The core of the ship began to pulse through his veins, his eyes glowing faint blue. Vera stepped back for the first time unsure, and Ethan whispered, You wanted the Awakener. Well, here I am, the ship roared, light spilling from every crack and surface outside. The stars trembled as something ancient and human fused into one, and in that moment, the war between the past and the future began again. The ship's sanctuary trembled like it was alive. Its engines screamed through the void as light and shadow danced across the broken halls. Ethan stood in the center of the chaos, his body surrounded by faint blue light. Lyra's energy pulsed through his veins, warm and powerful like a heartbeat that wasn't his. He could feel her presence. Not gone, not dead, but living inside him. Her voice whispered softly in his mind. Do not fight with hate. Ethan, fight with mercy. Outside, Vera's ship circled them like a predator, firing beams that shook the sanctuary to its core. The other Aelari queens gathered around Ethan, their bodies glowing weakly after the brutal fight. She's trying to break through the hull, one of them said, her voice trembling. Ethan looked around at the frightened faces. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't a leader, but right now, they were looking at him like both. He took a deep breath. Then we stop her, he said. Together, Lyra's voice echoed softly inside him. The core listens to you now. Ethan turned toward the ship's glowing walls, touching the metal surface. It pulsed under his hand like living skin, responding to his thoughts. He imagined the shields repairing, the weapons recharging. And the ship obeyed. Panels lit up, circuits connected. And the sanctuary came alive again. The alien queens stared in awe. He controls it, one whispered. Ethan shook his head. No, she does, he said quietly. I'm just her voice. Outside, the stars turned red as Vera's ship unleashed a storm of energy bolts. The shields flared and the hull cracked. But the sanctuary held strong. Ethan, Lyra's voice whispered again. You must go to the heart, the bridge between life and machine. He nodded and ran down the corridor, his boots echoing against metal. Sparks rained from the ceiling as explosions tore through the decks. When he reached the core chamber, it was glowing brighter than ever, a sphere of light beating like a living sun. Vera's image appeared inside the chamber, a projection of red light. Her eyes burned with fury. You think you can stop me with her ghost? She spat. Ethan stood his ground. You've spent centuries chasing revenge. What did it give you? Vera's expression twisted. It gave me purpose, she hissed. It gave me something your kind took from me. Everything. Ethan took a step forward, his glow pulsing brighter. Lyra still believed in peace, he said. Even after all the pain. Vera laughed coldly. Peace is a story the dying tell themselves, she said. She reached out her hand, and the core trembled violently through her connection. The sanctuary's lights began to dim. She's draining it, one of the Aelari shouted over the comms. Ethan gritted his teeth, focusing on Lyra's voice within. The core is alive, Ethan, she whispered. You must remind it who we are. He closed his eyes, letting the memories flow. Lyra's laughter, the promise Elias Cole made. The dream of uniting two worlds, and the core responded, flooding the room with blue light. It pushed back against Vera's control, light colliding with shadow. Outside, the two ships spun in orbit, locked in a deadly storm of energy. The nebula around them glowed white-hot, twisting like a storm of souls. Vera screamed, her red aura flaring. "You think you can rewrite the past?" Ethan shouted back, "No, Mike, but I can end it." He thrust his hands into the beam of light, feeling his body tear between worlds. Memories surged, thousands of lives, battles, voices all merging into one truth. He saw Elias Cole again, his ancestor, standing beside Lyra in their final moment. Elias whispered through the memory, "Forgive them, even when they can't forgive you." And then everything exploded in light. When the glow faded, Ethan stood in a strange void, surrounded by stars and echoes of faces. Lyra appeared beside him, her body made of pure light. "Ethan," she said softly, "this is the memory stream, the place where truth and history meet." He looked around, breathless. "What do you want me to do?" She smiled sadly. "You must show her the truth." Vera appeared before them, her form flickering between beauty and rage. "You think memories can save you?" she shouted. Lyra raised her hand and the void filled with images, cities burning, soldiers falling, humans and Alari dying side by side. Ethan stepped closer. "This is what really happened. Vera, humanity didn't destroy you." "It destroyed itself," Lyra nodded, "and Elias. He loved us both, he sealed us to protect what remained." Vera's eyes flickered, confusion breaking through her anger. "I saw him kill us," she said weakly. "I saw him destroy everything." Lyra's voice trembled. "You saw what the generals wanted you to see. They turned your pain into a weapon, your memory into hate." The red light around Vera began to fade, replaced by soft violet. Her face twisted with emotion. "All this time, I killed for lies." Ethan stepped forward, his voice gentle. "Then stop killing and start remembering." Tears of light formed in Vera's eyes, drifting like glowing dust. Lyra reached out and touched her sister's face. "Come home," she whispered. The void shattered with a blinding flash. Ethan gasped and found himself back inside the sanctuary. Lying on the floor, the ship was quiet, drifting peacefully through the nebula. The red lights of battle were gone, replaced by a soft blue glow. Vera stood before him, her armor cracked, her eyes no longer red but silver. She looked at him silently, then knelt. "I remember," she whispered, "and I am sorry." The remaining Alari entered the room, their faces calm for the first time. Lyra's voice spoke softly in Ethan's mind. "The war is over, Ethan." But the story isn't. He stood weakly, looking out at the endless stars. The nebula shimmered around the ship like a sea of light. Ethan smiled faintly, whispering, "We saved them." Lyra's reply came like a soft breath. "No, Ethan, you reminded them who they were." The ship's sensors beeped, detecting something new. Ahead of them lay thousands of sleeping vessels, the Aolari fleet. Silent and waiting, Vera looked at him. "What now, Awakener?" Ethan stared at the glowing horizon, his heart heavy and hopeful. "We wake them," he said quietly. "But this time, not for war." The sanctuary slowly turned toward the fleet. Its engines burned blue like dawn breaking after endless night. And as the stars reflected off Ethan's eyes, Lyra's final whisper filled the air. "The Awakener has kept his promise." The sanctuary drifted quietly through the golden light of the nebula. The battle was over, but the silence that followed felt heavier than war. Ethan Cole stood by the main window, looking out at the endless rows of sleeping ships. Thousands of Alari vessels hung motionless, like silver stars frozen in time. Behind him, the surviving queens moved slowly, tending to the wounded and repairing what they could. The once cold ship now felt warm, alive again. Every corridor glowed softly with blue light, the same light that pulsed faintly beneath Ethan's skin. Lyra's presence was still within him, not as a voice now, but as a calm warmth in his heart. Vera approached him, her armor cracked and her tone quiet. "We owe you our lives," she said. "You reminded us what we were meant to be." Ethan smiled faintly. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "Just don't make the same mistake twice." Vera nodded, her silver eyes filled with both regret and strength. "The universe remembers the Aolari as gods," she said softly. "But today, we start as people." Ethan turned back toward the sleeping fleet. Each ship held thousands of memories, millions of voices waiting to awaken. He wondered if the galaxy was ready for them, for an ancient race reborn. Lyra's whisper came faintly through his thoughts. "They will be ready because you will lead them." He chuckled under his breath. I'm no leader. Lyra, her voice answered gently. Leadership isn't power, Ethan, it's mercy. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing slowly, every sound. Every hum of the ship seemed alive, like Lyra's soul was part of everything now. Suddenly the radar beeped. A distant signal appeared. Weak, flickering but familiar, Ethan frowned. That's impossible, he murmured. The coordinates pointed toward the far edge of the nebula, the ruins of Alara Prime, the world that burned long ago. Vera stepped beside him, her face tense. That's home, she whispered. The sanctuary turned toward the signal, engines igniting with a soft roar. As they neared the planet, the view took Ethan's breath away. Alara Prime wasn't dead, not completely, beneath the burned surface. Pockets of light still shimmered and cities half awake. Machines still alive after 1,000 years. When they entered orbit, the signal grew stronger. It wasn't random, it was a message. Repeating in an old human frequency, Ethan activated the translator, and a familiar voice filled the room. This is Dr. Elias Cole, it said. If anyone hears this, the truth must live on. Ethan froze, his heart pounding. His ancestor's voice echoed like a ghost through time. Vera looked at him silently. Understanding the weight of what this meant, the message continued. The Aelari were never our enemies. They were our mirror and our greatest hope. If my descendants ever find this message, remember peace is not built by forgetting pain, but by facing it. The transmission faded into static. Leaving the room quiet again, Ethan stood motionless. Feeling the tears sting his eyes, he whispered, You kept your promise. Old man, Lyra's voice came softly. And now you will keep yours. Ethan looked at the queens, each one watching him with quiet hope. He took a deep breath. We rebuild Alara, he said, not as gods, not as rulers, but as a home. The Aelari bowed their heads, light rippling across their skin like the beginning of dawn, for the first time in centuries. The ship's halls echoed not with sorrow, but with purpose. Days passed as the sanctuary descended onto the surface. The world beneath was scarred but beautiful. Oceans of silver dust, mountains of crystal, and skies glowing faint blue. The queens worked together to restore power grids, heal old machines, and awaken what remained of their people. Ethan helped where he could, learning their language, understanding their history each night. He sat beneath the alien sky, listening to the hum of distant life returning. Sometimes he would hear Lyra's laughter in the wind. Soft and distant, he missed her, but he knew she was everywhere now, in the stars and the walls and the hearts of her people. Vera often stood beside him in silence. One night she spoke quietly. Do you hate me for what I did? Ethan shook his head. No, he said softly. You were lost in pain, but now you're part of the light again. Vera smiled faintly, a tear glimmering like starlight. You are strange, human. You forgive too easily. Ethan looked up at the stars. That's what makes us human, he said, and maybe that's what saves us. As time passed, the once broken fleet began to awaken. One by one, ships rose from the dust, hovering over the new world, their lights glowing blue like beating hearts. The galaxy would soon see the return of the Aelari, not as conquerors, but as guardians of balance. And at the center of it all stood a human, the man who changed everything. A celebration began in the great plaza of the reborn city. Ethan stood before the crowd, thousands of Aelari looking up at him. Their light shimmered like an ocean of stars, and the air thrummed with hope. He spoke simply. We come from different worlds, but our pain is the same. Let that pain become our bridge, not our wall, he said, because we are stronger together than we ever were apart. The crowd cheered softly, not loud, but powerful like a song carried by the wind. Vera stepped forward, placing a glowing pendant around his neck, Lyra's symbol. The Awakener, she said, the one who gave us back our souls. Ethan looked up at the twin moons of Alara, his heart heavy with both sorrow and peace. Lyra's voice whispered one last time, Thank you, Ethan, for proving that mercy still exists among the stars. He smiled faintly, whispering back, Goodbye. Lyra! The wind carried her voice like a final melody, fading into the night, and as the sanctuary rose once more into the sky, its engines glowing like the first sunrise of a new age, Ethan Cole, the human scavenger who found a ghost ship, became something greater than a legend. He became the bridge between two lost worlds, the human who changed everything,